Breaking news for you here on YouTube. Daryl Ruiter, Coach Lance Reisland. The Cleveland Browns have a coach. The white smoke is billowing from the chimneys in Berea, and the winner of the 24-day Odyssey is, drumroll please, Todd Monken. A surprise out of nowhere. Now, I understand he was one of the three finalists, but I thought for sure this was a choice between Jim Schwartz and Nathan Shieldhouse. Not the case. Big left turn for the Cleveland Browns. Todd Monken, the former offensive coordinator of the Browns back in 2019 under Freddie Kitchens, and also former offensive coordinator of the Baltimore Ravens, whom John Harbaugh, I should say, was anxiously awaiting the end of this coaching search for the Browns because he wanted to hire him as his Giants offensive coordinator. Now, John Harbaugh has to look elsewhere. Coach, your initial reaction: Todd Monken wins the 10-contestant head coaching derby here in 2026.
Well, I'm not disappointed in Todd Monken. I'm disappointed in the process by which it went by, right? It's a guy who he's done really well in Baltimore. I like his offensive attack, how he does things. How that carries over to a head coach, I'm not sure yet, but he is organized. He is structured. I will say this. The thing I will say about Todd Monken, and I wrote about when he attacked the Browns defense, he's a guy that has a plan. And he's a guy that's going to rely on physicality, and he's a guy that goes week to week. And so there's, as an offensive mind where they've struggled, I'm happy. I don't know how it's going to be as a head coach, but as you and I have talked about extensively, it's the process. I'm with you. I thought for sure it was Schwartz or Shieldhouse, and then all of a sudden that's not the case. And now you have, I don't want to say a mess, but now you have some things that you really got to work on too, because now your defense is in a tough spot. So just interesting. The Browns never cease to kind of surprise me with some of their thought process and how they handle things.
Do you think that this might have been ownership wanted one thing, Andrew Berry wanted another, and so Todd Monken ultimately ended up being the compromise to the whole deal?
Well, again, for me, that speaks of alignment and the lack of alignment that has started for me through this whole thing. The lack of alignment has stopped for me with the Flacco situation when he was traded. So from then on, it feels like it's been a mess. And if you don't have your GM and the owner who's doing the money and the GM who's in charge of this stuff, if they're not on the same page, you're going to get so think about when things go bad, which is going to, because they don't have a lot on offense. Who's going to take the blame? Is it Monken or, obviously it will be Monken. But again, you're not going to have people in your corner if everybody's not aligned. And when things go bad in football, and they always go bad in football at times, if you're not aligned, then things start to fall apart, and you get guys talking behind each other's backs, and this side of the ball can't do this. And it's a recipe for disaster unless you're successful really, really early.
Well, a couple of things to touch on there that you brought up. First of all, the behind your back things falling apart. We saw it in 2019. I believe it was Zach Jackson of The Athletic that reported back then that Monken was telling opposing coaches just what a mess it was under Freddie Kitchens, and how they would game plan for one thing Monday through Saturday, and then game day would come and Freddie would left turn everything. So that doesn't bode well. You have the whole situation with Monken and his relationship with Lamar Jackson, a two-time NFL MVP. He acknowledged his own words that he didn't have as good of a relationship with Lamar as he could have had. Now, he did couch those words by saying, hey, we didn't have a bad relationship, but it could have been better, and I didn't do a good enough job coaching him. Again, those were Todd Monken's own words following the 2026 season in Baltimore that ultimately resulted in John Harbaugh getting fired as head coach of the Ravens and subsequently being hired by the New York Football Giants to be their next head coach. And then the fallout of Jim Schwartz. Jim Schwartz is understandably very bitter, very unhappy right now that he got passed over. This is the second time he's interviewed with the Browns to be their head coach. He was in their building for the last 3 seasons, did an outstanding job. And I said immediately on the Fan with Baskin and Phelps shortly after the news popped that, look, if things go south this fall, do you really want Jim Schwartz in the building? Because he's going to sit there and say, hey, man, maybe y'all should have hired me to be the head coach and it wouldn't be going like this. So the fact that Schwartz is upset and now is looking for other opportunities, even though he is under a contract for 2026, and who knows, maybe they back up the Brinks truck to make him happy. The Browns do have a history of salvaging relationships. Myles Garrett comes to mind. David Njoku comes to mind, right, from folks that have wanted out of the organization. So let's not completely be dismissive of Schwartz staying, but doesn't look like he wants to do that right now. So all of those things that I mentioned there, Lance, how does that impact now Todd Monken walking in that door, or back in that door, this time as the head coach, and, trying to, for lack of a better phrase, put Humpty Dumpty together here?
Well, I'll start with the Lamar Jackson relationship. I read a lot into that. And as you know, those things are usually met in the middle. But football is a game that's won with players, not coaches. And that's the job of the coach to make that relationship work, even if the coach has to bite his tongue a little bit at times. So once again, I don't think that was all Todd Monken, and I don't think it was all Lamar Jackson. But the job of a coach is to make that work. And I like the fact that everything I've read so far, he's kind of owned that. And hopefully that's a good thing. Now, in terms of, what's going to happen with Schwartz, I immediately thought that this was going to be a problem. This is a ripple effect of getting rid of Kevin Stefanski. And Kevin Stefanski's time in Cleveland, good, bad, if you think he's good, not bad, whatever it is, it was getting stale here. And that's the NFL and things of that nature. But this is a ripple effect. So now you have an offense that is has to be built from the studs. I use your quote all the time because that's very much the truth, right? This is a rebuild on that side of the ball. Now the defense, which is a kind of always a retool, now is also going to be in trouble, I think, a little bit early on, because you got guys that are good in any front, any coverage, anything. Guys, Myles Garrett, Schlesinger, Denzel Ward. But now you have guys that are not as good without this scheme. Tyson Campbell, Devin Bush, Mason Graham, Malik Collins, Wright. There's a bunch of guys that really fit into this scheme. How does it affect them? So now you're affecting that side of the ball as well. So, once again, now as Monken comes in, whoever you coach, he's going to have to immediately. Those defensive guys said they wanted Schwartz, and so there's going to be a negative connotation there. There's going to be some wounds he has to heal there. It's just a very tough position to come into because it's not all football. And as Todd Monken, as I said, I really like him as an offensive coordinator. I love his plans week to week. But this is when he comes in, he will not be dealing with football for a long time because there's so many other things that he has to attack. And again, Daryl, I'll say this without hesitation: at any level of football, if there's not alignment, it is set up for failure. The Browns have to figure out how to get aligned quickly, or this will not work.
Yeah, it did not feel like they were aligned throughout this coaching search. It felt like Andrew Berry wanted one thing, ownership wanted another. And in the end, a compromise was made. Want to read a couple of statements. This from Jimmy and Dee Haslam. They're the managing and principal partners of Haslam Sports Group, the owners and operators of the Cleveland Browns. Quote, "We're excited to name Todd Monken the next head coach of the Cleveland Browns." Expect that. I wouldn't imagine they'd ever say, "Yeah, we're really bummed that we named Todd Monken our head coach." Let's see here. Todd is highly intelligent, and his experienced, innovative offensive mindset has been at the forefront of constructing productive and successful offenses at the NFL and collegiate level. Over the last 20 years, he is an outstanding leader and has a clear vision to lead our team as a strong communicator who values trust with his players, but also accountability and preparation. In our committee's exhaustive reference work on Todd, his commitment to player development was evident, and his tough and straightforward coaching is respected by the players and coaches he's worked with, putting our team in a position to succeed while developing our players to maximize their talents. We welcome Todd, Terry, and the rest of the Monken family back to the Browns and look forward to him establishing the winning culture that will lead our team to success, to the success our fans so deserve. So in between my stumbling and bubbling reading that statement there, a couple of things really stand out for me. The innovative offensive mind, which I do believe that checks a box that Andrew Berry is looking for. The experience part, I think that certainly checks a box that Browns ownership was looking for in this search. A couple other things too, mentioning about development, mentioning accountability, which again, I think that those are boxes that both Andrew Berry and the Haslams were looking to check off there. So while I may not be crazy about the hire, and I certainly am not. Based on that statement alone, at least there's some rationale. You can at least see why they did this, Lance.
Well, yeah. Now people have to understand, and when you hire a new coach, these are all ripple effects. These are not anything new to everybody who's had a new coach at any level of football, but especially the NFL. It's their own people. What do people think? How do people view things? Why are they the head coach? Head coach wants his own guys, philosophy. So now you're talking about accountability and how he runs things. Well, that's immediately going to rub a bunch of guys who have done things their own way in that locker room, whether it be right or wrong. They're going to be different than Todd Monken. So are those guys going to be gone? How, his assistant coaches, who's he bringing in? How is he bringing those guys in? What is their philosophy? Those who like or dislike Shedeur Sanders, their new offensive coordinator, who are they? They might not want all the hype that comes with that, and they want to start with ground zero at every position, not just quarterback. So there's a lot of ripple effects when you get rid of a head coach. When you don't win, the things you read, Daryl, those are great, but that's like the first time we hear those things. And you and I talked about this last night. The idea that they are not transparent with some of the things they do allows everyone to write their own narrative, to fill in their own blanks. And when you do that, when you're losing culture right now, those narratives are not usually going to be positive. And that's the reality of what they do things differently. And if those things that are done differently always work, then you go, hey, it works. It's their philosophy. But those haven't worked. And that's why I think people get frustrated. Like you said, all those things about Todd Monken, he's a guy who's going to find matchups. He's not a system-based guy. For me, I love him because he's a players over plays guy. He'll find matchups. He likes physicality. He's going to use motion. All those things that Browns fans want on their offense, he's going to give you. But the ripple effect is now the defense is different. Now the players in the locker room, one is Schwartz. There's a problem there. Everything is going to change. And once again, now you have to rebuild all three phases quickly. And the Senior Bowl is going on. So those guys got to hit the ground running right now to find what they want. But once again, everything that you say, you just wish it was a little bit more transparent. So all of us don't, me, for example, write my own narrative, let them write the narrative and then we can react to it. That's not how they work right now.
Again, continuing coverage here on YouTube, the Browns naming Todd Monken, Kevin Stefanski's successor, as head coach. This from Browns Executive Vice President of Football Operations and General Manager Andrew Berry. Quote, Todd has a varied and diverse background that we find as a particular appealing match for our team at this stage in its life cycle. He has a direct, demanding, and detail-oriented leadership style that would create a great incubator for a young team. His successful offensive track record at both the pro and college level with a variety of offensive systems and quarterback skill sets will allow maximum flexibility as we make several long-term investments on that side of the ball. The lessons he learned from John Harbaugh and Kirby Smart, as well as his demonstrated track record turning around Southern Miss, have shown us that he has a full understanding of what the position requires and the capacity to execute. We cannot wait to get started, and we welcome Todd, Terry, and Travis to Cleveland, end quote. Again, that from Andrew Berry. We have touched on a little bit of the fallout from this hire. Of course, Jim Schwartz wasting no time. I would imagine folks from his camp getting out there that he was very displeased that he got passed over for a second time by the Browns for this opportunity. This is, again, the second cycle that they interviewed him for the head coaching job. I think this is the deepest that he has gone in that search process. He was a finalist for the job along with Grant Shieldhouse, as well as Anthony Lynn, the current Washington Commanders run game specialist coordinator. However, they term it down there in Washington. So, and of course, Schwartz being a finalist there. So, it really was down to a final three last night that they chose from, and they went a path that I don't think any of us saw coming in selecting Todd Monken. So Bubba Ventrone is getting interview requests as well for special teams coordinator. I think we would agree losing Jim Schwartz potentially could be catastrophic to the Browns, not only because of what Schwartz means within the locker room, as well as what he brought the last 3 years on the football field, from preparation to scheme, et cetera, and establishing a very consistent defensive effort. On the flip side of that, the antithesis of it, Bubba Ventrone in the special teams unit basically a complete catastrophe. Blocked kicks, big returns allowed, penalties, muffed returns, poor returns. Just there was nothing on that side of the ball. It seemed like a week did not go by without the special teams unit costing the Browns in a big, big way. So I don't know that the loss of Bubba Ventrone potentially would be nearly as catastrophic as the potential of losing Jim Schwartz in this whole mess.
Yeah, when Bubba Ventrone came in, he was very highly regarded. In fact, I thought he was a great hire when he came in. For some reason, it didn't work here. And I will be one to tell you as a coach where, I've coached and things don't get across. For some reason, his coaching style, however he did things in practice, his alignment, whatever it is, it doesn't make him a bad coach. He was not very successful here. And that's the reality of it. They punted the ball. Think about this. They punted the ball very well, and they kicked it very well this year. And their special teams were really, really poor. And that's a problem. And those are things that are effort-based. Those are things that are alignment-based. Special teams come down to a couple things: getting aligned right, being fundamentally sound, and playing with your hair on fire. And that was really never the case with the special teams unit. So, yeah, I think they needed a fresh start there anyway. He needs a fresh start. The Browns need a fresh start. And I agree. I think that's a good thing. The loss of Jim Schwartz could be a bad thing, right? It could be a bad thing really quick, just because you're going to see those mid-level guys in a new scheme. They might not be as successful. That's what I'm most worried about. The Devin Bushes, the Tyson Campbells, like we said, those guys who are really, really good in this scheme. Are they going to be as good in a scheme? A guy like Tyson Campbell, he's not great in zone. He's pretty great in man. Well, most coaches in the NFL, they play a lot more zone than the Browns do. So we're going to see what happens moving forward. But again, these are all ripple effects. Everything you said about Todd Monken is absolutely true. He's going to do all those things very, very well. He kind of mixes the college motion movement with old school physicality, which is important in this weather and the AFC, North. But he's got to get buy-in quick from a lot of different angles, and he's going to need support from his general manager and his owners, because there's going to be some rough times ahead.
Well, I'd like to sit here and talk scheme with you as far as like what we can expect from him. The problem is right now, there's not much to talk about on the offensive side of the ball. The offensive line needs to be rebuilt. They got to do some work in the receiver room. They probably have to bring in another tight end or two to help out Harold Fannin Jr., because I'm guessing David Njoku's not going to be back. And we don't know what the quarterback situation looks like. So, but his adaptability, we saw it here in 2019 to repaint the picture, even though the Browns, I think they went like 6-10, something like that in 2019 under Freddie Kitchens. And it was a bit of a disaster. Nick Chubb finished 6 yards shy of 1,500. Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham Jr., caught for over 1,000 yards. It was an offense that averaged under 21 points per game, which by Brownsian standards is one of the better offensive seasons that this franchise has had. We know what he's done recently in Baltimore with Lamar Jackson and that Ravens offense. So just from your perspective right now, Lance, this is not a guy that seems to have a specific system that he is married to. I think, as you put it, you said this is a guy that marries the system to the players he has to work with here. I don't know. What can we glean, or what can we expect from a Todd Monken offense that really, quite frankly, doesn't have a developed personality? And there's not a whole lot of personnel that we are convinced are going to be cornerstones on that side of the football. So what do the expectations look like in season one under Todd Monken?
Well, the two players they do have is they have Fannin, who's good, I think, going to be consistently pretty good year in and year out, and Judkins, who's a really good first down back, especially getting you your second five. Besides that, a couple of overlying things that I think you'll see out of Todd Monken on his offense. One is it's going to be a week-to-week plan. It's not going to be based on necessarily we're a system only. It's going to be, all right, this team struggles in the secondary. We're going to throw the ball a little bit more. This team is not good up front, or this team's a penetrating. So you're going to get more of a week to week with the foundation being best players will touch it, and we're going to be physical. Those are two things you can count on from Todd Monken. He's also a matchup guy. So if you look back at what he did to the Browns, he's going to not kind of block the penetration of the defensive line. He's going to allow them to come upfield and trap them. He stayed away from Denzel Ward and Martin Emerson and worked more on the linebackers and safety in the pass game. So he's a matchup guy. That's something you also like. So those are the overlying things you're going to see, is that he's very player-based. He doesn't coach schemes. He has his schemes, but he's very multiple in what he does. And you're going to see a physical team that uses a lot of different motion, a lot of different personnel groups, a lot of different shifts and motions and things of that nature to create the matchups he wants. In fact, you can kind of look at it, and I've said this when I did my scouting report on the Ravens this year. Yeah. He's very much like Schwartz on the offense side of the ball, where he's going to find matchups, try to exploit those matchups, and make you change who you are. He's going to dictate what you do on defense, not react. So Browns fans will be happy, maybe not as a head coach, but the offensive scheme he's bringing in. And I was also very impressed, Daryl, what he did with Lamar Jackson from the pocket. He made Lamar Jackson a pretty solid pocket guy besides using his great feet. So offensively, I think they'll be fine in terms of scheme. They got to get some players on that side of the ball.
Yeah, and only time will tell there. Again, Todd Monken named head coach by the Cleveland Browns. He is the 6th head coach now hired by the Haslam Sports Group since they took this football team over in October 2012, coming off a 6-year stint with Kevin Stefanski at the helm that produced 2 playoff seasons, but in the end, not a winning record. And of course, the last 2 years, they won just 8 games, and it was very difficult to watch a lot of times, especially on the offensive side of the ball, which was Stefanski's forte. He is now the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. He was introduced there on Tuesday, and now we await word as far as when the Browns are going to introduce Todd Monken. There are a lot of difficult questions that need to be asked, not so much of Monken, but I would have to say of Andrew Berry, as well as, I'm going to say Jimmy Haslam, and I'm not singling Jimmy out, but he typically tends to be the spokesperson for the ownership group. He is the one that spoke after Kevin Stefanski's firing there in the lobby out in Berea. So that is why I mentioned Jimmy Haslam, even though it is a collaborative effort out there. Let me ask you this, Lance. Because of the way they collaborate, and I think you alluded to this a little earlier in our cast here on YouTube, that you got to have alignment, and if you've got all these issues now all of a sudden that have popped up moments after, like this was supposed to be a seminal moment for the Browns, right? This is supposed to be a happy day for the Cleveland Browns, and it doesn't feel that way, right?
Absolutely. No, it does not. And that's the reality of it. And when you don't have that alignment, Daryl, that's what ends up happening. And when you're not transparent, and once again, there's things that all of us as fans and media, we don't deserve, we don't need to know, but the idea of what they're thinking and how they're thinking, if they stay close-lipped on that stuff. And again, when you're not aligned, you saw what happened to Kevin when things aren't aligned. Kevin wasn't the only person that was at fault. He had his hand in it too, but there was a lot of hands in it. And when you're aligned, everybody takes the blame and everybody takes the credit. When you're winning, the alignment doesn't show up as much as when you're losing. When you're losing, the lack of alignment shows up because people are placing blame. And that's what Todd Monken has come into. He's come into a situation where when things go wrong, they always blame the coach, which is not always the case, but that's, as coaches, we know that. But he's also come into a situation where he's not necessarily the final call on things, which for me is always important as a football coach. If your job is on the line, then you should make more of the football decisions. That's not really how they work. They're not the only team that does that, but they hide everything, and they're very close-lipped on stuff. So you don't really know. And then all of us, including myself, we say, this is what I think they're doing, which might not be right at all. But again, if I don't know, then I kind of, as a football coach and being involved in football for 40 years, that's kind of over 40, more than that now. It's kind of how you do it in football. Why would Schwartz want to stay? Well, that's not how it works in football. If you pass him up, I don't care how much money you pay him. Do you want Schwartz in the building? He's irritated now. Do you want him coaching your defense? Do you want him to say, well, you should have hired me when things go bad, with an offense that's probably going to go bad for a while because they don't have any players on it? So it's just they're setting themselves up for failure. Hopefully it doesn't go that way. And it has worked before like this, but usually when those people aren't aligned, it causes problems when things go bad, especially.
24 days, 10 different candidates, including Tommy Rees, Dan Pitcher, Adding Dirty, Jim Schwartz, Mike McDaniel, Jesse Minter, Todd Monken, Grant Udinsky, Anthony Lynn, and Nate Shieldhouse, they ultimately settle. And I think that's the key word here. They settle on Todd Monken as the new head coach of the Cleveland Browns. We'll await word on when they plan on doing the introducing of Monken. I think it would behoove the Browns to hold separate press conferences similar to what they did with Kevin Stefanski, because frankly, I don't think it's fair to put Monken up there with Andrew Berry and or Jimmy Haslam and have all three of them field questions at the same time. I think there are questions that Berry and Haslam need to answer independent of Todd Monken. And again, I don't think it's fair that Monken have to sit through that, right? So I hope that the Browns do it the right way and introduce Monken, but also allow us to visit with both Jimmy Haslam and Andrew Berry to really go over this process. Because like you said, the narrative out there is that this whole thing was dysfunctional. And, I have had people within the organization reach out to me to dispel that. Okay. What I've not had, though, I've not had a single person in that organization reach out to me to try and sell me on Todd Monken. And I have not been complimentary of this hire. Granted, I think that they got some other fires they are, certainly dealing with and needing to put out. But, we'll again wait and see when they introduce Todd Monken as the next head coach in front of the cameras and microphones there, and they do the photo op and all that feel good stuff. But man, like we're talking about, Lance, it doesn't feel good today. After all of this is ultimately where we landed. So there you have it. Todd Monken is your new head coach. You'll hear plenty more from myself and Coach Lance Reisland, not only here on YouTube as we go throughout the offseason, but obviously on 92.3 The Fan as well. So thanks as always for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on the 92.3 The Fan YouTube channel. Feel free to like, dislike, leave a comment or two or three, whatnot. We certainly appreciate you watching as well as participating. So for Coach Riz, Daryl Ruiter, for Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan, right here on YouTube.